We have some breaking news here on ABC News Live Reports. I'm Alex Brachet in Washington. Right now, we are following news out of Idaho. Bryan Kohberger, accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students in 2022, has accepted a plea deal. ABC News has confirmed that he has agreed to plead guilty to all counts. ABC News Live anchor Kana Whitworth is on the phone with us. She has been following this case from the beginning. And Kana, what details can you share with us about how this deal came together?
Yeah, Alex, I mean, this is simply a stunning turn of events in a case that has gripped this entire nation. Up until today, we were looking at an August 18th trial date with Bryan Kohberger's life on the line. What we know now from families who received a letter is that Bryan Kohberger has accepted a plea deal. In part of this plea deal, the defendant will plead guilty to all counts listed in the indictment. So that is 4 counts of murder as well as a burglary count as well. He will serve 4 life sentences consecutively with no possibility of parole. And the defendant will waive all rights to appeal this conviction as well. It also sounds like they will be seeking some restitution for families. This is things like money for funeral expenses and, victims' compensation. The next thing that's happening, Alex, is there will be a change of plea hearing, and that is this Wednesday, July 2nd. And so for some, this may be some finality and some closure. For others, you have to imagine, Alex, there are so many unanswered questions in this case, and I'm sure that there's fear that those questions will remain unanswered. But here we are, after more than 2 years, the one and only suspect in the Idaho college murders case, the man who stood accused of murdering Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Ethan Chapin. His name is Bryan Kohberger, and he has accepted a plea deal.
Well, and listen, Kana, of all the trials it feels like we've been keeping track of over the last several weeks, this was the one that we anticipated was at least going to have some sort of resolution later on in the year at the earliest. But for our viewers that are just kind of catching up, can you walk us through what the past several months have been like with this case?
It's been tumultuous. There has been filing after filing and pushback from the defense, initially trying to delay the trial. They have maintained their client's innocence this entire time. They wanted to have the death penalty taken off the table. They tried many times unsuccessfully for that to happen. In the meantime, this has been under a gag order. So people involved in this case have not been able to speak out about it, which is why so much of this case has been shrouded in secrecy. We thought that it was going to go to trial in Moscow, and then it got moved down to Boise, and then it got pushed back yet again. And so here we are now, about a month before this trial was supposed to start, and we have learned that instead of a trial, there will be a plea deal.
And Kana, do we know that in this plea deal, was there anything that was taken off the table? Was the death penalty taken off the table?
The death penalty is taken off the table. So exactly, in exchange for pleading guilty, the death penalty will be taken off the table. It's a pretty standard cut and dry plea deal. There weren't very many concessions, which you have to imagine there may have been families out there that wanted concessions like that.
Well, and the other thing is, because we just saw your interview earlier today with the friends of some of these victims. I don't know if you've had a chance to speak with them since this news, but for our viewers, how are they hoping to remember their best friends?
It's so important, after speaking with Emily Lott and Hunter Johnson, the two that were the first to arrive at that King Road home, that the world remember their friends for how they lived their lives and not for their last day, not for how they died. I had a chance to speak with Ethan Chapin's entire family as well, and their family motto is to live like Ethan. He was a beaming, bright ray of sunshine. All of these kids were really described in that manner, and that's what's the most important here, is that we remember these kids, we remember how they lived, and we don't lose sight of the families here. Maybe there's finality here, but they never get to wake up with their kids ever again.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. I remember in that interview hearing one of the friends talking about how they really kind of rejected this label of the Idaho Four because you had four individuals who had, different personalities and very much their own identities here, and that's something that we certainly don't want to lose. Kana, if you don't mind sticking around, I want to bring in our legal contributor Bryan Buckmeyer, who's also with us right now. And Bryan, first off, did this deal surprise you?
Oh, Alex, absolutely. This is shocking and surprising for a number of reasons. Now, whenever you have a death penalty case, the major issue or major concern that a defense attorney will have is trying to get that off the table. And so understanding there's a plea deal where Bryan Kohberger will not be put to death, especially in a state that has such, let's say, wide-reaching ways in which they can employ the death penalty, that makes sense. But he's still going to die within prison. I mean, this sentence is 4 consecutive life sentence. No one lives that long, especially not in prison. So I would have thought, based on the offer that was given, he would have still have gone to trial because it's death one way or another.
Well, and also the timing of this, Bryan. I mean, is there anything to glean from that? We talked about that August 18th trial date, essentially.
Yeah, so plea deals always get their best the closer you get to trial. And there's a number of factors that go into it. If you think about it from a defense attorney's side of view or even the defendant's point of view, they're getting nervous. They're getting worried. Whether you're innocent or guilty or you believe yourself one way or the other, having your life in the hands of 12 people that you've never met before can be can shake you to your core in many ways. And for the government, they're thinking about putting on these witnesses, putting on people who are going to testify about some of the most horrific events that happened probably in this community and putting the family through this all. And so they're thinking about sparing the family. Now, we know at least to some degree that a letter must have been sent to the families to okay this. And so the families, at least on their face until we hear otherwise, presumably were okay with this offer that Bryan Kohberger would spend the rest of his natural life in prison without having to be subjected to the photos, the testimony, and the imagery that would have come from this trial.
What do you make of his defense team's strategy in this case?
I think it made sense. This is a defense team that was a public defender office from a neighboring county facing a death penalty case. And what you do with that is you fight zealously and vigorously to save that person's life. And in some regards, and in many regards actually, they achieved that here. Bryan Kohberger will not be put to death by the state and instead will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. And in a death penalty case, as I said earlier, that is in many ways a victory. And you make every argument you can, not just for the trial court, but also for appeals. And I think with here, they're going to walk away saying their client accepted a deal. Their client obviously knew, or hopefully knew what they were facing, understood what they were facing, and we'll find out on July 2nd if this actually happens, because a plea doesn't happen until they actually say the words. There have been many instances where people agree to a plea deal and then ultimately reject it at the 11th hour or close to the 12th hour there. And so I think the strategy made sense. They got in many regards what they were looking for, and I think we'll see what happens on Wednesday.
All right. Our thanks to Bryan and Kana. But yes, breaking news today, according to a letter sent to the victim's family, Bryan Kohberger has agreed to plead guilty on all counts. He will be sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences and waives the right to appeal. Be sure to catch Kana's ABC audio podcast about this case called The King Road Killings, wherever you get your podcasts.